Alrighty, what is going on, guys? Just gonna give folks a minute to jump on in. Thank you all for joining us this Thursday afternoon here. Super excited for this call. This was, a pretty recent idea that my dad and I had. Um, I don't know, Dad. I think maybe Thursday or Friday we hopped on and you mentioned something similar and I said, you know what, I've been thinking about this. I think it would be awesome um, to provide additional value. We're always searching for ways that we can better serve our community and sometimes it takes a little bit of creativity and outside the box thinking because obviously what we're going to be discussing today isn't massively directly applicable to trading, but there actually are, trading is oftentimes a microcosm of life. Um, and, we battle with adversity and confront adversity and obstacles and challenges, whether we're day traders or longer term investors like you are, Dad. And there is tremendous learnings that we can maybe take from this conversation and apply to trading, but certainly, most certainly, outside of trading as well. So I'm excited for this conversation to be able to broadcast this to you all joining us, and we'll have it recorded. So if at any point you need to drop, we'll have it uploaded to the e-learning portal. But Dad, excited to have you on today.
Yeah, awesome, Andy. I'm really excited to be here. And maybe just a comment and add on to what you just said that, what we're doing here is not directly related to trading and investing. But I always found, being on Wall Street for, over 30 years, that the stress of trading and investing, it brings out it's because the human emotion comes right to the surface when you're trading. It tends to bring out all the worst character traits that you have as a human being, and you can see it right before your very eyes in real time. Your weaknesses come out, and if you don't work on those those weaknesses and getting them under control, you're going to continue to make the same mistakes again and again as a trader. So, like you said, trading is a sort of a microcosm of life, just like sports. You were an athlete, serious athlete. Sports at a high level is a microcosm of life, and the mental game is so essential for performance, not only in trading, not only in athletics, not only in work, as a spouse, as a parent. The mental side of the equation is, I don't know, is it 90%, 99% of it? It's so critical. So
Yeah, 100%. All of these areas of life to be excellent, to truly, reach your potential. Uh, and you've heard people like Michael Jordan say it's all mental. You've heard the best hedge fund managers say it's all mental, the best traders. So in any avenue of life, to be truly amazing, to reach your potential, I absolutely agree. It's so much of it is about how you approach things mentally. I want to start. I mean, we're going to be talking about how to think through and the action that one should take to overcome challenges. And that may sound broad, but we'll get a little bit more granular than that. But Dad, I'd love to start if you could just walk us through. You mentioned that I was an athlete. You were as well, an extremely high performing athlete. You got to a higher level than I ever did. Played Division I tennis at Columbia University. You're in the Hall of Fame there, as is my mom, your wife. I imagine, you faced tremendous obstacles and challenges there. You didn't start to get into Hasidic Judaism until your 40s, and so you had this long life of having obstacle after obstacle, as we all do, right? Even if you were not a high level athlete, if you were not a high level trader, really, or really anything in life, like we all have our own challenges. There isn't a single person on the planet that doesn't confront challenges and obstacles constantly. It is the reality of life. And I think that in itself is an interesting reframe, right? Right? Challenges and obstacles and failures are inevitable. And even just acknowledging that can be helpful. But, what I'm getting at is you went through most of your life without having a real framework as to how to work through challenges and how to think through them and take action on them. I'd be curious to hear you articulate the difference in your life from not having a framework to having a framework.
So that's, sometimes I look back at, my life um, before I sort of got into, like you said, the Hasidic side of Judaism. That's really the more spiritual, even the more mystical side, you could say. Um, I don't know how I really managed the day to day, because life is, as you said it's stressful, it's difficult. There's one challenge after another, and how do we understand that? And you can go through life, and I think most people do. You just are sort of reacting. You're uh, in reactive mode, and your emotions take over. Your reflex responses take over. um, and, I think for, the first 40 or so years of my life, especially, obviously as a husband, as a father, even as a professional on Wall Street, by definition, I was very reactive. And, you run into certain patterns in your life where you might be short-tempered. Um, with your children, with your wife, and you get yourself into trouble. Even in trading, I had overall my performance was very good, but I definitely made a lot of mistakes because I was reacting from emotion, and a position would maybe go against me, and I just, again, I wasn't an options trader the way you guys are. I wasn't day trading. It was more medium term, but just cutting positions because I couldn't take the pain. But it was, again, an emotional response. Um, and again, I look back at it, and, by the grace of God, uh, your mom and I managed to raise three incredible children, but we made plenty of mistakes, especially in those early years when we didn't have, a framework guided by Judaism. And then once I think we sort of delved into, more spirituality, I think you and Mike, your brother, and Jesse, your sister, all can attest to the changes that you saw at home, and those changes affected every walk of life. And obviously, it's a journey. You never stop learning, hopefully, and you just, hope to go from strength to strength and continue to improve, because the challenges never stop coming, and it's all about having that framework to go back to meet those challenges.
Yeah, that's great. So, and the biggest thing I'm hearing is reactive versus proactive, right? And
Good
so,
way of framing it.
you just sort of running around like a chicken with your head cut off, not having a framework, like we said, um, to go off of, but just sort of guessing and being impulsive, right? Answering to the feeling that you have versus you being in the driver's seat, you acknowledging what's going on, you having clarity as to how to respond to it. My Chabad rabbi from Middlebury, where I went to college, I was talking with him once when I was in college, and we were sort of having a similar conversation, and he shared something and gave me advice that I found to be very meaningful, which was we all have physical triggers when something doesn't go our way, when we face an obstacle, right? It may be something that your spouse says that can sort of just trigger you. And before you even have the ultimate response, that in this case would be a negative response, something that we don't, looking back, that we wish we hadn't done. Before that even happens, there's a physical response. He said, for some people, it's they feel a bead of sweat drip down their neck, or they feel the arms on their hair stick up. And it's, different for everyone, but maybe you guys listening can resonate and sort of identify what that is for you. And he said, if you can just focus on acknowledging that thing happening, and instead of just taking action on it right away, just think about what's going on for 1 second, acknowledge that your hair is sticking up and that this is something that triggers you, and just meditate on it for 1 second. And either that'll either cause you to just let it go, not say anything at all, or respond in a completely different way. And that's something I've taken with me, that I notice, multiple times a month. It happens whether it's with a friend or whoever else, and just taking a second to not be reactive, but to be in the driver's seat a little bit more and just acknowledge.
Yeah, this is where you're touching on the core of free will. It is what separates a human being from an animal. An animal does not have that space between stimulus and response. So if you hold a piece of meat in front of an animal, in front of a dog, the dog can't make a decision of maybe I should hold off. Maybe I should not eat before dinner because I'll ruin my dinner. Maybe I shouldn't gobble that whole, slice of meat down in 10 seconds. Maybe I should control myself and eat slowly. A human being, we get stimulus and we get that brief couple seconds to decide how we're going to respond to that stimulus. For example, if you have a little child, a 7-year-old, and he misbehaves terribly, you may want to just your reflexes to just grab him and snap and scream, but you have free will. You have the power to hold off and make a decision. What is the best way to respond to my child in a way that teaches him a lesson, but you do so in a positive way? Not that he's just fearful of you, fearful of dad or mom, but in a way that he respects you. And when you do reflex response after reflex response after reflex response, year after year after year, you do tremendous amount of damage to your relationships. On the other hand, if you can master the science of pausing, doing exactly what you say, contemplate, how should I respond? What's the best way to respond? You build, it's like going to the weight room. You build a muscle, and the more you do it, the more that muscle grows. It's the same thing with practicing that pause between stimulus and your response. And again, that's what separates a human being from an animal. That's free will. And that free will is the difference between a healthy family, a happy family, and a family that is chaotic, right? That's one example.
Yeah. That's great. So I think that's fantastic insight, for super applicable for any of these instances that pop up throughout the day or the week or the month. How about more macro challenges, right? Say someone is really unhappy with how their work is going, and their boss doesn't acknowledge them the way that they feel they're deserving of, or they've been looking for a new job and continue to just not get past a first round interview. more broad macro challenges, just, nothing feels like it's going your way. How do you think about approaching challenges like that?
Yeah. Okay. Good one. Before I answer that, I want to just say one add-on to what we talked about taking a minute before responding. The human being, we're so complex. Our minds our brains are so complex. So we can ponder and give a consideration before we just do a reflex response. But we're so smart, we can intellectualize and justify our terrible reflex response, right? We can play mind games with ourselves, and our intellect can become a slave to our emotions. So that's something that we have to be aware of. So we want to make sure that our intellectualizing is coming from the right place, that it's not coming from a place where our emotions are just manipulating our intellect. We want our intellect to take control of our emotions. It's a subtle difference, but it's a really important difference. And maybe at another time we can get more into it. But um, I hope that's a little bit clear anyway.
Yep.
But going to your question about, you know, let's say a boss, you feel like he's not giving you the credit you deserve, or you go on a job interview and the interview doesn't go your way, or you think you did a great job, but you don't get the job. How to think about that? Well, I'll talk about as you know, Andy, each week we read a portion of the Torah, of the Bible, and there are always, the greatest wisdom of in the world comes from the Bible. And last week we read about Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his brothers, and Joseph ended up, that terrible event, right? Getting sold by your family, and you end up far, far, far away, uh, and into Egypt. And ultimately, from sort of being kind of a slave, he rises to become the viceroy of Egypt, the number two to Pharaoh in Egypt. And Joseph's brothers come to him, and they don't know it. They don't know it's their brother. They don't know it's Joseph. There's a famine throughout the land. They come to him for food. And ultimately, after a series of events, he reveals himself to them, to his brothers, and lets them know, I'm Joseph. And they're terrified. They think he wants revenge. And his response to them was, I wasn't sold. I was sent, right? You didn't sell me. It was God who ultimately sent me. You were the vehicle. So what's the lesson? What I'm responding to your question. Really, if you have the view that God is really behind everything that happens, whether you got the job or didn't get the job, whether your boss was tough on you, didn't give you the credit you think you deserve, if you view the world as just a vehicle of God's messages to you, and your free will decision is how you respond to all these different messages. That's your power. You get to choose your response. Don't get to choose how your boss treats you. You don't get to choose, you do your best in the job interview. You do the best you possibly can at work. That's up to you. But how these people, all these different actors in this grand play, how they treat you, that's not in your hand. If you're doing the best you can do, if you do your best to be joyful every day, to treat other people well, to be cheerful, to try your best, their response to you is out of your hands. What is in your hands is to continue to have a good attitude, and seeing it all, everyone else, as a messenger from God, And your job from that from that point on is simply to react well to it. And just, if you don't get the job, hey, this wasn't for me. This wasn't where I was meant to be. Ultimately, the universe, God, is going to direct me where I need to be. But this wasn't the right position for me. And then if a boss isn't giving you the credit that you think you deserve, maybe the lesson is I need to work on my humility a little bit. I don't need my joy in life. It doesn't derive from what my boss says to me. My joy in life comes from other things. It comes from my family. It comes from how I lead my life, the character that I'm building within myself. You know, we shouldn't try to derive pleasures from things that are external that we can't control.
That's great. Yeah. And I think, so sort of really searching for what's the lesson? What can I learn from this? What does God want from me? And once you identify that, you can truly express gratitude for the challenge that you're facing because it's an opportunity for growth. And not only is it an opportunity for growth in the specific thing that you've identified, which is what you just mentioned, Dad, but it's also an opportunity to become closer to God and to strengthen that relationship, right? If you're able to express gratitude for the hardships, can you talk through why that is such a powerful thing?
Yeah, that's so if you view the world as everything coming from God, and I'm going to give a very deep Hasidic thought here. There's a concept that when a human being creates something, let's say there's a carpenter and he builds a table. The carpenter can build that table and then he can walk away from it and the table will continue to stand. Okay, that's the physical world as we know it and understand it. Now, if you were to take a very powerful microscope, you would see that the table is really comprised of energy. If you had a and you wouldn't see the wooden table at all, you would just see a lot of energy moving. So what's going on there? Where is that energy coming from? Well, the Hasidic concept is that God is constantly creating the world. And if God were to stop creating the world for 1 second, the world would just evaporate or disintegrate. It would vanish. It would be gone. There'd be nothing. Because there needs to be this constant infusion of energy to keep the world going. So if that's true, if God is constantly infusing the world with energy, it means that every single situation is God infusing it with energy constantly. There are simply no accidents. God is behind everything. And therefore, even the most difficult things in life, things that we would never want for ourselves, the worst possible things that people go through, it's all from God. And God is good. So everything is good. We may not have the perspective, and usually we definitely do not have the perspective to see the good inside the difficult. But if we understand this concept that God is constantly creating the world and making everything happen, then it has to be good, even if it's well beyond our comprehension. And therefore, it's all a gift. And it's all coming with God's love. And if you can lead your life with that type of trust, which is no easy feat, it's no easy feat, but it's something we can work on and meditate on, then even the greatest difficulties have the potential to bring you closer to God. And in fact, the greatest difficulties in life are meant to bring you to a level that you could not have possibly achieved had you not confronted that difficulty. It forces you to dig deep down within yourself. And you would have never had any reason to dig so deep down into yourself if that difficulty didn't happen. I see someone, Jamie, posts, "Life happens for you, not to you." That is a classic Hasidic concept.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
yeah, that's amazing. I heard this from Chase Taub, a reel he posted, Dad, yesterday, and I said this to um, someone who is in our lifetime access program. So they get the separate group chat and a once a month mastermind call with me and what we call Andy's group. And he's, expressed that he overtraded yesterday and he, made a bunch of mistakes. And I sort of paraphrased what I heard from Chase Taub, and I said, "Don't be hard on yourself. You have two choices when you screw up. The first is to tell yourself you're forgetting about it and you move on, and the second is to truly meditate on the actions you took, how it makes you feel, what you'll do differently moving forward, and to lead with and take tremendous learnings from your mistakes. And this is how darkness turns into light." And this light, that is the light that comes from darkness, is much more powerful than light that was always light and did not come from darkness. So it's, nearly the exact same idea that you're bringing up now, which is if you had never gone through that adversity, that challenge, that tremendous hardship, you could have never come out on the other side at a much greater level had things always just been good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a in Hasidus, right? In Hasidus, it says it compares two types of people. One type of person um, is really able to uh, lead a good life. They don't indulge in anything. They don't overeat. They don't. They're not tempted to overeat. They're not tempted to drink. They're not tempted to smoke. Uh, e- Everything they do is on the straight path, but it comes naturally to them. They have no weaknesses. Is that an achievement that they lead the straight path, walk life on the straight path? It's nice. Take another person who really has to battle. They really have to battle. They have a tough time resisting that, fourth piece of cake. They have a tough time battling a drinking addiction, but they overcome. They overcome, they overcome. Who's the greater person? Who achieved more? I think the answer is clear. The one who really had to resist and overcome. And the growth that person goes through, the wisdom that they can offer the world is so great. The person who never had any struggles, what can they teach? Who can they help? They don't know what difficulty is. They never had an addiction. They never had a struggle. So who are the greatest heroes in the world? The people who have the greatest struggles and overcome them. But they keep battling, and they battle, and they fall down, but they get up again and they get up again and they get up again and they never quit. They keep going, they keep battling. You know, those are the people that have the greatest wisdom and have they're forced to grow. And that's most of us, right? How many, you know, in Judaism we call it a tzaddik, the person who never sins, the person who never falls. That's a tzaddik. And the tzaddik is amazing, but it's hardly any of us. But they don't struggle. The rest of us have to struggle.
Yeah. And you know, God doesn't give us any challenges that we can't overcome. Exactly like Jamie said, it happens for you, not to you, and everything is exactly as it should be, and exactly in proportion with what we can take on and overcome. So the tougher things are, the more challenging things feel. All it is you know, God thinking more highly of you. Right? And that's sort of another thing that just came to mind for me, which can induce gratitude.
Yeah, it's a great thought. Um, God gives the greatest challenges to the people he knows. Uh, Not only can they handle it, but they can do something great with it. And the person who can't really handle it, uh, God's going to go lightly on them. We all have, you're touching on something incredibly, a very deep mystical idea. So to really understand it, I think we need to get into it a little bit. And guys, just so you know, this is all sort of deep mystical Judaism. When mankind entered the world, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It led to well, it was a cataclysmic event. And since then, we have been given the task of repairing the world, of fixing the world, and trying to restore it to a state of perfection. And each of us, each human being has been given a task, and it's up to them to repair their little portion of the world. And let's say you have an anger problem, or let's say you have a jealousy problem, or let's say you have an addiction problem, whatever it is, you've been tasked with repairing that little part of the world and elevating it. So you have to look at your so-called weaknesses as your job. It's your role in the world to repair that part of the world that needs to be repaired. So if you have, let's say your issue is depression, and that's what you have to work on. Well, that's God gave you that responsibility. It's your mission. It's your mission in the world to transform yourself and to turn yourself into a joyful person, not a sad person. You can whatever your particular set of issues are, your struggles, it's God's vote of confidence in you. And he knows you can do it because he wouldn't have given it to you if he knew you couldn't do it. So if you have a drinking problem, that's no accident. But God gave you that because he knows you can repair it.
So good. So what do you think the biggest challenges are, that the biggest difficulties that people face in achieving their soul correction? Is it identify, okay, what is my core flaw or the flawed aspects of my nature that I am on this planet to overcome? Is that the major obstacle? Really knowing what it is? Is it awareness of this idea overall? Or is it once I've identified it, uh, how do I turn it around, and how do I consistently change the path that I'm on rather than, okay, my battle is with depression. I'm going to be joyful. I'm joyful and happy for 2 days, and then I fall off and I'm super inconsistent. Which of those few things do you think is the greatest challenge, or is it different from person to person?
I think it differs a bit from person to person, but generally speaking, first identifying what your particular set of issues, uh, what your particular set of issues are, um, that's a major step. It takes a lot of introspection, a lot of honesty, and many of us uh, don't want to admit that we're we have issues. And in fact, if there's a pattern, let's say there's a pattern in your life where you're constantly getting into arguments with everybody, right? And everyone's wronging you, and you're always the victim. Well, maybe the problem is you, not everyone else. And all human beings, this is in biology we call it the fight or flight mechanism. We protect ourselves. We go into defensive mode, and that's very helpful when you're running away from your life to save your life. But it can be very damaging and self-destructive in the modern world, right? And our fight or flight response mechanism, our defensive mechanism, where we're always trying to protect our ego and not taking responsibility, but pointing the fingers at others. That is getting over that and looking at ourselves in the mirror and assessing ourselves with deep honesty. Um, that's it. That right there is and that can be for many people a big part of the battle. Once you do that and you've identified what your particular issues are, then you get to working on yourself
Yeah.
and being self-aware when your fight or flight response mechanism, your reflexes responses are just kicking in and undermining you and undermining all your relationships with your family, with your brother, sister, parents, children. Um, you got to catch yourself, and that's when that free will moment that we talked about earlier comes in. But you have to be aware of it first.
Yeah.
So it goes differs, but these are all the two major steps: identifying what your issues are, and then really working on it again and again and again. And like we said, it's a muscle. It's like building muscle. So you get better at it with time. At first, you just keep failing because you've lived your entire life with your reflexes just taking over, and your reflexes are incredibly powerful because we live by our reflex. We're constantly, our reflexes pretty much guide most of our lives. And the meditative, intellectual part of ourselves, the reflective part, we don't use that very often. So it takes a while to build up.
Yeah. And the defensiveness that you brought up, that's something that I struggled with for a long time. Um, and you and mom would really try to get me to work on that in my teenage years, and it's something I really did struggle with. I would just always have this reaction to protect myself, to protect my ego. Um, and then I remember maybe, yeah, it was actually just over a year ago. My sister gave me constructive criticism on something, and I said, "You're so right. Thank you so much." And she said, "Wow, like that's amazing. That's the way that you handle feedback now." And I had been doing it for some time. I'd really worked on that part of myself, and it wasn't just a year ago. I think it had been a little bit longer than that, but that was great to hear from her. And I can happily say that I turn that around and I really, you use the word issue, and I know what you really mean is opportunity. It's not an issue that we have within ourselves, it's an opportunity for growth. And so I think when I was able to understand that, like this person is not bringing to light this issue that I have, they're bringing about and making clear that I have an opportunity to improve. And it's a very different frame.
Yeah, yeah. That's thank you for bringing that out. And it goes back to this concept that God gave us all these opportunities, as you say. It's our responsibility, and God believes in us. That's why He gave us uh, these um, issues, which are really opportunities, because when we do that, we elevate this world. As we improve ourselves, we are improving God's world, and that's why this world was created, for us to improve it, to elevate it, to make it a much better place. And as Rami said, that's tikkun olam. That's the Hebrew word for this concept of what we're discussing. So it's very, very powerful if you look at it in terms of opportunities. It really is. It's a paradigm shift. That's what I would call it. When you look, these aren't ugly things inside. Well, they are ugly. They can be ugly, but they're enormous opportunities, and God gave them to us. And that's the paradigm shift. And if you look at it as part of your mission to take these challenges because they're opportunities for incredible growth, you can't grow. I mean, Andy, let's take it in terms of hockey. If you are an incredible defensive defenseman, and you're the best in the NHL. Yes, but if you want to grow as a player, you're going to have to work on something that you're not so good. That's a weakness. So as a human being, if you happen to be a super funny person and people love to be around you because you're funny and but at the same time, all you do is talk about yourself and you're like an egomaniac. And at some point, people get tired of being around you because your jokes get less and less funny, as everything is about you, about you, about you. Um, you to grow as a person, you need to develop some humility, right? If all you do is excel at what you're good at, then you didn't grow in life. And the idea is growth. So
Amazing. Alrighty. I think we'll go ahead and wrap up our first session here. Guys, let us know in chat if you got value out of this conversation. Again, I think it's really special to have my dad in here. He, I think, a lot of what we shared, Dad, is really empowering. Um, and one of the things I find most empowering is that you began this journey for yourself, like I said, in your 40s, around 2009, 2010. And you were able to just drastically transform the trajectory of your own personal development by immersing yourself into this sort of ideology and making these paradigm shifts for yourself. And no matter where anyone is at in life, you have the opportunity to do just that and just start enjoying your life more and become closer to your family, have a more peaceful home, have a more loving and joy-filled reality. And there's nothing like that.
well, the I think the greatest joy from a parent, for a parent, is to see your kids uh, adopt good values and lead a life guided by those values. And and therefore lead a healthy, productive, joyful, meaningful life. So that's something that, you and thank God, uh, you know, Mike and Jesse, your brother and sister, all of you have done. So that's the greatest blessing of all.
That's awesome. Alrighty, guys. So glad you guys enjoyed this session. We'll be sure to continue doing that moving forward. I'll keep you updated on maybe if we want to get a more concrete cadence or whatever the case may be. We'll keep you guys updated, and we most certainly look forward to the next one. So thank you all very much for taking an hour out of your afternoon to join us. So glad that you got value out of this, and we look forward to the next one. Thanks so much, Dad.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, guys.